Hello, OAS family. It is time for another book review, and today we are reviewing a pretty unique book in our library of books. I think that this is the only book that we have that is of this kind, and it's called The Magic of the Brush by Kai-Yu Su and Catherine Wu. Before we get into the details of the book, the general statistics of the book, it is 10 1/4 inches tall by approximately 7.5 inches wide. And the book is 88 pages, and the text is predominantly in English. So basically, this book is kind of like an overview of Chinese brush painting with an emphasis on sort of like the more contextual ideas like the history and the philosophy. So in that way, I think it's good for a brand new person who is looking for an introduction that isn't so heavy, that's more of a light introduction, more of like a broad introduction, and that doesn't get so and less like a class. You know, this is more like an intro class or just like a brief, a light introduction. So we'll go ahead and get into the actual content of the book. So here we have the table of contents. So you can see here that it goes through, it has like 16 different sections, and we will talk about each one. So here is an introduction. It's also good to mention that the book is bound very simply, and the pages are, you know, it's not a fancy book at all. It's sort of quite a casual book. So here's the introduction, and there's some really good information here, some good historical context, and some interesting ideas about the origin, and really some cool little things. I mean, I think the best way is to just read a couple excerpts. So it's like here, the Oriental brush originated in high antiquity, but the style currently in use is said to have been invented by Meng Tian of the 3rd century BC. Prior to him, the medium for drawing and writing has consisted of either chisel and stone or stick dipped in lacquer on bamboo slabs. The charcoal burnt on the tip of a thin stick and silk or cotton textiles had also been used. After its invention, the art of brush making quickly sprang up to involve all kinds of animal hair and bamboo, wood, or horn, or ivory, resulting in brushes of all sizes and shapes. The suppleness and resiliency varied according to the nature of the hair, from the most soft rabbit hair to the most stiff horse hair, with weasel, raccoon, badger, and other animal hairs of varying strengths in between. The users will eventually cultivate their preferences, but at the beginning they should acquire a small and a medium-sized brush made of weasel hair, which resembles sable, commonly referred to as a small orchid and bamboo or medium or large orchid and bamboo brush. The real quality and workmanship of these two types of brushes require experience, judgment, and this is where the teacher comes in. So that is a very unique paragraph in our library of books that sort of gives you an idea of how the history of Chinese brush painting led into the more modern day materials, and then provides an instruction about what are the first couple brushes to buy. So that is like a really good section here, and there's more content like that in this section. So then now we have this whole chapter on the brush stroke, and again, I think talking about its relationship to calligraphy. So this is, again, a key element of the nature or essence of brush painting that is often missed by people who study it. You know, if you just jump in and start getting into the instruction right away and you aren't clued in a little bit as to the origins, then I find that it's very common to get the wrong idea and to basically take a Western approach to an Eastern art form, and that typically produces a frustrating experience. So I like this book because it goes back to the beginning and frames the art form in the context of its history and the culture and its relationship to calligraphy. And so I think that will give you give somebody, especially somebody who doesn't have the cultural background in Chinese culture, the best possible chance to have an authentic and satisfying experience learning brush painting. So this is a section just basically on the brush stroke and how it is linked to calligraphy. So now we have this idea of qi. So again, this is like another aspect of it that is glossed over, maybe mentioned in a single sentence, but having an entire chapter dedicated to what is the idea of qi and how do you produce it or channel it or direct it, and relating it to brush painting is really valuable. So this is a chapter on qi and how it relates to calligraphy and painting. So now we're having our first, painting visuals here. So we can see here that these pages are decorated with little sketches of plum blossoms and bamboo leaves and nice. Like I said, this is, not necessarily a structured study, but it's more of a light introduction and a really effective one. So here is a whole section where they show different Chinese words and the evolution of those words from basically like a natural picture of the subject to a pictographic rendition all the way into the character. So you can see the evolution of the language and how the language is really painting. So it's obvious that now when you look at it this way, how there is a link between calligraphy and painting, because Chinese is a pictographic language. So it's showing very clearly all these different characters and how they evolved from the real objects and the renderings of those objects, and those renderings are simplified into the characters. So now we get into a little bit of a section about Taoism. So again, very important to the essence of Chinese culture and the idea of harmony and seeking harmony with your environment, and essential to the mindset of a brush painter. So we have some bamboo leaves here. Another really great chapter on the importance of copying and how in the West there is this idea of, there's a much stronger idea of creative ownership and doing original things, and how the act of copying is actually seen as something negative. But that isn't that way in Eastern culture, and it's actually very much a part of traditional learning to copy the work of the masters. And so this is sort of just giving the student permission to copy by placing copying in the context of the way that brush painting has been learned throughout the history of it. So some more lovely little plum blossom clusters, and then some calligraphy here. And then there's a whole section that they call culturally sanctioned values in Chinese art. So this is a little bit about like the subjects and what they represent. So, they're talking about here how bamboo is about resiliency, and why the bamboo has come to symbolize that. And so this is a little bit of an idea that each of these subjects have grown to represent values in Chinese culture, and that those values are depicted in the rendering of the subjects, or they're trying to embody these subjects with these values, with the spirit of these ideas. So, you know, of course, bamboo is like this resiliency or this strength through flexibility, this idea. So we have some more sketches and calligraphy here. And then we have a chapter on the relationship between poetry and painting. So you can see why often you will see on Chinese paintings poems written in calligraphy. Here's some orchid blossoms here. So, you know, for somebody who's just brand new, who's looking for a light introduction and a broad introduction and something that really places the art form in proper context, I think this is a really unique book. So this is a section is on identification of art within the artist. So again, another interesting subject. So, you know, if we talk about this or just read a paragraph, it says, according to this tradition, the art of literature and then of art and of literature lies in its capacity to persuade and influence man to become morally good. Otherwise, literature and art have no meaning and should not exist at all. Throughout Chinese history, other theories about art and literature did emerge from time to time, but the didactic orthodoxy persisted and still dominates today. It explains why literature and art to lead a revolution can continue to be upheld in the People's Republic of China in spite of the eclipse of Mao Zedong and his talks of the Yan'an Forum on Art and Literature. While in Taiwan, the campaign to seek a moral rejuvenation in literature and art is every so often repeated. So this is the idea of how art is viewed and the purpose of art as it is viewed in Chinese culture. So it has an interesting, there's interesting ideas here and unique to Eastern or at least Chinese points of view. So here's Chinese theory and practice with colors. So the role of color use, and again tying it back to historical or cultural ideals. Another very unique chapter in the book. So here we're getting into some finished compositions now. So they're showing some orchid and chrysanthemum compositions, as well as some calligraphy. Here's like a plum branch, and then a very loose bamboo painting here where you can see the leaves sort of influenced by the wind. Some lotus here. Now we're getting into the specifics of the subject. So we have this section here on plum blossoms, a section on seals, a section on chrysanthemum, this idea of trees and their significance in Chinese culture. So more sketches or finished paintings here. So these clusters of pins or hairs. And then we have this bamboo trunks along with different branches and boughs here. Section on landscape painting. This is a whole section on the characteristics of Chinese painting and what makes it unique. So that's also a good thing to sort of focus on, to place the art form in the context of other types of art forms and to understand what about it, what makes it unique. And here's a finished lotus painting here. And then here's a chapter that they're calling Art and Chinese Society. So the placement of art in the context of its role in society, and like talking about basically the history of sort of like literati painting, where it was like, you know, these sort of higher scholars, you know, sort of elite intellectuals, and they were looking to express themselves and express their internal ideas, and they began painting in this sort of spontaneous way, and that is like this, what is often referred to as literati painting, which we call like xie, this depicting the idea or spontaneous style painting. Here's a section on mounting. And so that is the book. Again, very short, light overview, introduction. I think it makes a great gift, you know, if you have a friend who's interested in this art form and you're wanting to get something that gives them a really authentic idea, but without being too overwhelming or too detailed. I think this is a wonderful book. And even those of us who paint, you know, these are some ideas that are actually not covered that thoroughly in more practically informative books. So, you know, the other books sort of jump right in to the art itself and the instruction itself, assuming that you have all this context, but actually this context is not that easy to find. So once again, I hope you enjoyed this book. I think it's pretty unique. When I was going through our library of books, this one sort of popped off at the shelf at me, and it's very reasonably priced. So wouldn't be bad to pick up a copy. And maybe even if you're into teaching a class, this is a very unique kind of class that I think would have really broad appeal, that is good at getting people a light introduction to the art form without being too intimidating or too cumbersome from a material standpoint. All right, so thanks very much. We hope you enjoyed this video book review. To purchase this book, you can go to our website at orientalartsupply.com. Make sure you like and subscribe this video for more content like this. And as always, we wish you happy painting.